ተመልሼ ሃይ እንዴት ናችሁ? እንኳን ተገናኘን። ዛሬ ከበር የምናደርገው ጌት ነው። ጌት ቨርዥን ኮንትሮል ሲስተም፣ ጊትሃብ የመሳሰሉትን it's a very very important በጣም ኢምፖርታንት የሆነ አስፔክት ኦፍ there is an echo ሚዩት ማድረግ የሚችል ሰው ካለ testing Arif. Yeah, it's a very very important aspect of software engineering in general, especially now most traditional development is done in teams, and in development teams on የምንሰራው software ፕሮሰሳችን ላይ git እና any version control system is very very important. እና እናንተም እዚህ ክላስ ላይ የምትሰሩት ፕሮጀክት ላይ ጊትን መጠቀማችሁን ኤክስፔክት እናደርጋለን ማለት ነው። So yeah, pay attention, take notes, and I'll be available for questions text, by Telegram, by email, whatever you need. And there will be a smallish assignment based on የዛሬው content. So get ready for that. So Git ምንድን ነው? Git ማለት it's essentially a way of maintaining versions or different ፋይላችሁ ያለበትን state capture የሚያደርግ across time capture የሚያደርግ tool ነው, software ነው. What does this mean? Like you're in a team with a bunch of other developers, አይደለ? ሁላችሁም የምትሰሩት is contained in the same code base. ለምሳሌ አንድ ላይ ምንድነው ትራፊክ ሲስተሙን ከተማ ውስጥ ያለውን ትራፊክ ሲስተም ኮንትሮል የሚያደርግ ኦርጋናይዝ የሚያደርግ ሶፍትዌር እንስራ ብንባል አምስታችን አንድ ላይ ቲም አፕ አድርገን እንስራ ብንል አምስታችን ቁጭ ብለን አንድ ቴብል ላይ አንድ ላይ አይደለም ኮድ የምናደርገው ሁሌ አይደለ ኢንዲቪጁዋሊ ነው ኮድ የምናደርገው. We have some sort of like ስራ breakdown, and we will need a way of in a neat organized well documented way changeአችንን ኮንትሪቢዩት የምናደርግበት ሲስተም, right? ለምሳሌ እኔ ዛሬ የቶቹ መብራቶች ቀይ መሆናቸውን ቼክ የሚያደርግ ሜተድ አስገባሁ እላለሁ. ከዛ my colleague next day ምንድነው based on መቼ change መደረግ እንዳለበት መብራቶች ቼክ የሚያደርግ አስገባሁ ይላል. So ሁላችንም we're making changes. Sometimes አንድ ቦታ ይሆናል changeአችን, sometimes completely የተለያየ ቦታ ነው, sometimes አንድ የምናስገባው change it will break the system and now we want to go back to a previous version. So really just like versions maintain የማድረጊያ tool ነው. And it's a really revolutionary concept. It's really mainly used software engineering environment ውስጥ ግን when you think about it, this it's a collaboration tool. So really any context for collaboration in which output የምናደርገው ነገር digital product ነው, like you know a written document, code, or really anything. It's a great tool for being able to manage, okay, what does my product look like at this time? What does it look like at the next time? What does it look when this person changed it? What does it look when this person changed it? Do we want this person changed? የሚለውን ነገር navigate ማድረጊያ tool ነው. There's some information here. There's a lot of documentation out there on Git that you should definitely check out. Here is the official Git documentation by Git itself. And there's, you know, ሌላ version control softwareዎች አሉ, like CVS, Subversion, Perforce, Bazaar. እነዚህ ሁሉ they're also tools for basically the same thing, maintaining different versions of your software, but like how they do it exactly ትንሽ ይለያያል. With Git it's snapshots. ይሄንን ተርም ነው ማስታወስ ያለባችሁ. Git ላይ maintain የምታደርጉት version, it's a snapshot of everything in your working code base at that point in time, right? So in the method እዚህ ጋር like versions, this is just a helpful diagram to show Git እንዴት እንደሚል. እስካሁን I know it's very theoretical. We'll go into hands-on stuff pretty soon. But at this point there is a version of file A, file B, file C. Version 2 ላይ A ትንሽ ተቀይራለች፣ A1 ሆናለች። B is the same, C ተቀይራል፣ C1 ሆኗል። Version 3 ላይ I changed file ከዚህና ከዚህ version. This file is the same, B is the same, C ተቀየረ. So like snapshot ነው የሚወስደው of like if there's these 3 files in your system git ሁለተኛ version save ስታደርጉ saving የሚለውን ኮንሴፕት revisit እናደርገዋለን. They're called commits. ይሄ ይሆናል version 2 ከዛ version 3 እንትን ይላል. So ይሄን ነው maintain የሚያደርገው. So I can just have like ለምሳሌ the difference between version 3 and version 4 could be that I made a change to file B እና ኢንተግሬት አደረኩት ሜን ኮድ ቤስ ውስጥ. So now there's version 4. እሱ break ካረገ የሆነ ነገር or if it's undesirable I can just go back to version 3 as well. So it's just also a very safe way to develop where you are kind of safety net እያስቀመጣችሁ ነው at each point, checkpoint እያስቀመጣችሁ ነው at each point. At this point I knew everything worked properly የሚል እንትን አላችሁ at every point in time. Yeah, so there's some documentation here. Other conceptual stuff. We'll come back to this diagram, I think, once we engage with the tool more intimately. Again, yeah, working directory actually. Hey, like locally actually, code yaragachuበት ያለው directory, you know, or like folder or whatever with containing your code. In Git, there's the concept of a staging area. And ነገር before you make a change, I don't know, when you make a change and you want to add it to the repo, stage ማድረግ አለባችሁ. So these are like all of the different terms shown in this diagram are terms to know. You have working directory, like I mentioned, እየሰራችሁበት ያለው ቦታ ነው, like it's like the folder containing the code that you're making changes to. And then you have the repository. The repository is what is tracked by Git, right? In terms of repo ምናምን ሲባል repo on GitHub, like repo change አደረጋችሁ, especially those of you who have especially those of you who have had experience coding professionally. And the repository is what like what has the track changes. Git track እያደረጋቸው ያሉት ፋይሎችን እና ቨርዥኖቹን ምናምን maintain የተደረገው aspect ነው. That's the repo, right? Everything in the repo has a history of some sort በጊት በኩል ያለፈ. So that's your repo. And then the staging area is anytime you make a change. So you check out the project ይባላል. So you have like a version of your repo that you're working on, and then you make some changes, and then you stage those changes. Staging area. Maybe it's too early to really talk about staging and not why staging exists as a concept, but just know that before you commit any change or you make a stamp and be like, I want this snapshot at this time recorded. ሳትሉ በፊት stage ማድረግ አለባችሁ any files and changes. So again, I know it's a little confusing, but I just wanted to give a base before we go and like actually engage with Git, and then we'll be coming back to these things. So if you're a little bit like ምን እያለች ነው ምናምን እያላችሁ ከሆነ አታስቡ. So just wanted to give an overview of Git here, and then GitHub አለ እዚህ ጋር. This is GitHub. There's a bunch of things in GitHub. Who is familiar with GitHub? Please respond in the chats. I'll wait. GitHubን አይታችሁ ታውቃላችሁ ወይ? ገብታችሁ ታውቃላችሁ ወይ? Okay, some people are kind of familiar with it. Yeah, so GitHub So Git rasu, it's like it's software rasu. It's like a tool, right? Like you install it computer ላይ እና you can use it or in any environment that you're developing in. And the software itself, like I said, tracks snapshots of your code across different I don't know, time points. That's what it's good at. That's what it's really good at doing. GitHub is kind of like a web place, a web hub, web application built around Git, right? To allow us to kind of um, like share, put our things in a central remote location and take advantage of Git that way, right? So like it's just a house full repositories ብላችሁ አስቡ, with a bunch of like tools and capabilities added on top. So we talked about how you can have a Git repository አይደለ? Git repositoryያችን ነው ነገሮችን track የሚያደርገው. In GitHub you just have a bunch of different repositories like let me see if I can find so let's look at, I don't know, open source ፕሮጀክቶች ለምሳሌ በብዛት እንትን ውስጥ ነው ያሉት ጊትሀብ ውስጥ ነው የሚቀመጡት, right? So anybody can access them. Yeah, like let's see if this is okay, so this is an example of a repo on GitHub, Apache OpenNLP. It's like a NLP, natural language processing library. እንደምታዩት ይኸው welcome to Apache NLP, Apache. So there's a readme in the main repo that you can read about what the project is. Shares like በምንድን የተጠቀመው, the tech stack. You have different things. You have ways to get started, how to configure it locally and start working with it. And then, so yeah, so this is the code, right? እየገባን ማየት እንችላለን. There's docs, the tools, ምናምን, like there's a way it's architected. So this is the code. And then you can go and look at, so you see here, 1894 commits የሚል ነገር አለ. So a commit is when you say, you take a snapshot. That's a commit. Now it organizes a bunch of different changes into one commit. So ለምሳሌ this time ኤና ቢን ቀይሬ ነው ሲን ግን አልቀየርኩትም ስል የኤና ቢን የቀየርኳቸው ነገሮች ስቴጅ አረጋቸውና ኮሚት አረጋቸዋለሁ. So now they're part of the commit history. So I captured ያቺን እንትን. So it takes, really under the covers, it takes a snapshot of everything, but I can engage with it at seeing is that moment like capture ያረኩት ምንድን ነው የኤና የቢን change under this commit. So let's look at some commits here. Okay, so Ziga, we see a tick and X. So another beautiful thing of having, building tools on top of Git and having a central hub, already well integrated. There are software engineering ላይ የምናወራቸው ኮንሰፕቶች አሉ አሁን የሚመጡ like continuous integration and automated testing and ምናምን. And those are the things you can integrate into your repository tool ማለት ነው. So like when I have my project set up on GitHub, I can say automatically every time I put in something into the repo, test suite and run argo. Anytime እንዲሳረግ እነዚህን ቼኮች run arg, right? And then that can be tracked. That can be tracked automatically. So you can see some commit messages that people, so like, this user committed on December 30th, 2020, add the tokenizer and API section. I don't know if you can see the commits, what they actually changed it. Okay, so let's see. All right, so this is one of the commits, right? On December 2020, okay? And then see, I can look at the changes. right? Like these 3 lines were removed. These 2 lines were added. እነዚህ ላይኖች እንዳለ added ፕላስ ያለው እንዳለ የተጨመረው line ነው. This person at that moment in time on December ይሄ ኮሚቴ የነበረው December 17th 2020 ነው. The commit has a unique hash code. That's how we differentiate between commits, and it's a very efficient way of storing it on Git's behalf as well. And I'm looking at what changes that person made, right? Yeah, so you can also review people's changes, submit a review. Open source እንግዲህ ይሄ ነው, like there are like people who don't know each other contributing to the same code base. Pull requests are when you make some changes but you can't make changes directly into a repository, so you ask if you can put in changes, right? Like ይኸው እነዚህ እንዳለ pull requestoች ናቸው. Again, don't get worried that this is too much. I just want to give you a feel for things በኋላ like when we were going through a workflow understand እንድታደርጉት. So yeah, so these are some conversations. You can see changeoቹ approved እንደተደረጉ, got 2 approvals, and then there's no conflict, so it was merged. Checks. You can see which files were changed. Okay, so you got a feel for this. Let's get started on an actual workflow, on an actual Git workflow, right? So we already talked about a repository. Repository is the pool of different files, code or otherwise, that is organized, like tracked by Git, right? Repository ማለት and repository initialize ስታደርጉ Gitን Git is involved ማለት ነው. So when I'm talking about a repo, I'm talking about some version control system, right? So you have a repository somewhere, and then usually, traditionally, what ends up happening is in development teams in the industry or whatever, there is a central repo somewhere remote, somewhere online, for example, like on GitHub, right? This is one repo. And then what happens is people who want to work on that repo get their own copies of that repo, and I can do that by something called fork. So if you see here, I have fork. So I can fork. Where should be fork NLP? This is my account. So I have a forked. So what this means is I literally have a copy of that repo, but mine, one that I own. I can actually add changes to this. To the main one, to the central one, nobody can just add changes. እዛ ጋር change ማድረግ ስትፈልጉ ምን ታደርጋላችሁ? You create a pull request. You make changes to your own copy of that repo, and then you say, you raise a PR, raise a pull request. የሚባለው ምንድን ነው? You say, okay, I have these changes that I've looked at, tested, they work fine. Can you please add them to this repo? የሚል request አስገባለሁ. And then other people involved in the community, it could be whoever owns the central repo, or I could set it up in a way that says any 2 people from the open source community review ማድረግ አለባቸው. Usually there's some restrictions around ቅድም ቼክ ሲያያችሁት ማለት ነው, around does it pass all the tests, is the style of coding up to the standards, and then it's usually, are there any conflicts, like directly conflict የሚያደርግ ነገር አለ ወይ already ከጻፈው ጋር. And we'll see like what conflicts mean better later. And then you could say at least 2 people or at least 3 people need to approve it separately for this to be included in the main repo. And እነዚህ ሁሉ ነገሮች ከተሟሉ በኋላ a couple people ቅድም አይታችኋል to approval የተባለ, once they approve ይገባል ማለት ነው. So I can create the same flow for this. But anyway, now I have my version of OpenNLP. It is in sync with everything that goes on in the other repo. but I can make changes to this and it would not affect that other repo that I forked from. So chin fork የምትለዋን concept አስታውሳት መጀመሪያ ያደረግነው fork a repo on GitHub, right? And then I can clone this repo to my local. So cloning ደግሞ ምን ማለት ነው? So with forking, I created a completely separate copy አይደለ? That is like, oh, I want my own version of this one. Whatever I do here will not affect the other one, but like it is that other one in terms of what changes are there. But then now I want something that I እዚህ ላይ ኮድ ማድረግ አልችልም on the web app. Maybe I can make some changes to readme files, like እዚህ ላይ I can make a change or something, but I want to develop in my own development environment, right? I have my own like IDE, want to make changes locally, ምናምን. So I want a local version of this that is still linked to this. ሁለቱ ግን የተገናኙ መሆን አለባቸው. Things that I change where I have a local copy of this should be able to integrate easily with this repo ማለት ነው. So what I can do now is I can clone it. So if you do here, you see a URL for the repo. This is the repo. So now I come back to the terminal. Terminal ትዝላችኋለች? Does everybody see the text? Bless me. Okay. Yeah. If it gets too small, somebody say something in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat. It's a bit blurry. Okay. How about now? Okay. Good. So this is command prompt terminal in Mac na Unix terminal in but you have in Windows command prompt. There's also another tool called Git Bash. I'll send out a note to what you can download like to interact properly with Git. But I'm going to use the make directory command to create a special directory for this class here. Git lab session, and then I'm going to go into that directory. Right, so it's empty. And then now I can see if I can git clone, and then I copied that URL in Mateus and do that. Okay, so far we've used forking, and then now we used clone with an address of the repo, right? So what else did we use? Git clone, take a note of this down. Get a local copy of forked repo. Right? Okay. So now if I do list the contents of this directory, I see the OpenNLP directory, right? And if I go, Ayatru, this is the same as what's here. Now OpenNLP UIMA, OpenNLP tools, etc. So I have this locally, right? You can also go out and do, for easiness, like if I'm here, I can create my own project, new repository. The repository name will be what should we say? Git education. And then I'll make it public. I'll add a README file, and then yeah, okay, so create repository. So this initialized the repo for me, right? And then initial commit is just adding the readme. It created a commit message for me for adding the readme itself. So this is part of a commit. readme ራሱ የተጨመረችባት ሁኔታ is through a git commit. So there's one commit so far, but there's really nothing here, right? So this is a repo that I can also clone. Git clone. I exited the የቀደሙን directory. There you go. Nice and less. It took a lot less time because there's nothing in it this time. So I now have 2 repos, right? There's another way that I can have a Git repo is I can create a directory, make dir repo, and I could git init የምትባል command መጠቀም እችላለሁ. This is so now we're in the so we used git clone so far. Git init is a way of saying, okay, make this directory a repository. So let's say, before we do anything, let's look at, there's nothing here. In my own repo directory, there's nothing here. I'm going to do git init. So what it did is it initialized an empty git repository in. So there's nothing here, but if I do ls-a, -a is show me the hidden files. It shows me a little file called .git, a directory called .git, right? In this directory is a bunch of stuff that allows Git to know when you make changes to a file, how those changes differ from a previous version, tracking those changes, staging those changes, maintaining a difference between something staged and something that is modified after staging, committed files and not committed ያልሆኑ ፋይሎች ምናምን. All of this information it's able to find out and see. And this .git directory is how it does that. So when you do git init, really what it's creating is a .git directory and starting the tracking and starting the information. So this is also a repo. This repo, again, my own repo, she doesn't exist anywhere outside of this computer, laptop, right? My own repo, she just exists here. I can put her on GitHub, right? I can create a project on GitHub that matches this and push these changes there and have a remote version of this, but right now it only exists here. OpenNFB, a version of this repo exists in probably thousands of places, right? It's a very popular Apache published open source library on GitHub. I had forked and cloned this, right? But a bunch of other people had forked and cloned there. የኔና የነሱ completely separate, track አይደራረጉም at all. But we are all kind of part of the family and united by the central repo to which we can request to make changes. And that's how it's organized. And then we have Git education, which is, it exists here on this computer and it exists on GitHub from where I cloned it. Okay? All right, so now why don't we, so far min ወሰድን, git clone ሰራን, and then git init, initializing empty repo. All right, so let's go into Git education. And let's create a file, right? Touch metabala command creates a file for you. It creates an empty file essentially. So touch say empty file. Okay, so I have empty file in there. I can open up empty file. Let's keep empty file not contact. So Vim demo. Do you guys remember Vim? Vim is a text editor tool. So with Vim, I can say give it a file name that doesn't exist, and it creates the file and it opens up an editor in the terminal for me to change. So let's say what's the date today? November 4th. Nov4 thoughts. And then I can put in some of the notes from here. what is this? I don't know what it is. Copy paste ምናምን በጣም አዛ ነው በቪም I had forgotten. Okay, perfect. So these are the notes we've had so far. Escape and save it. Right, I can do cat, which dumps out the contents of something and see that it actually contains the content I put in. So now I have 2 files. I 3 actually. readme central repo የመጣው, and then I have empty file, and then I have Node4 thoughts. So now we're going to come up, be introduced with a new git command, which is git status. Git status ምንድን ነው የሚነግረን? The status of our repository. The status of our repository. So what does it say so far right now? It says untracked files. Use git add file to include in what will be committed. So, okay, this, you can ignore this. Do you see that whole dot on doesn't? This is kind of a way to, you know, ገብታችሁ የሆነ ነገር ውስጥ አንዱ ምናምን የምትሉበት ምናምን. So it just creates a hidden file under which those changes are kept up, so I can do like undo and a bunch of other stuff. Metadata and history version no, that doesn't have to do anything with git. Git just recognizes the new file in the directory. And for this, there's usually, so you see like there's a .git directory. You can create a .git ignore የሚባል file. I can create and put things in there that I want Git to ignore. ለምሳሌ stuff like this, like temporary files created by Vim to keep, you know, the history of it. I can say to Git, just ignore these. So when I'm asking you about the status, don't tell me anything about this, don't track it, don't do anything to it, just like pretend it doesn't exist ማለት እችላለሁ. And that goes in my git ignore. So I can probably find a git ignore in like the OpenNLP. Where is it? Okay, here. In this, yeah, see, there's a .gitignore file, and .gitignore file says anything star ማለት wildcard ናት. anything .iml ignore, right? እስኪኛ ምን ጨምር anything እንደዚህ አይነት ignore እንበለው. Let's open up a git ignore, right? And then I could just say star dot yeah, see now this one is gone because it ignored, but what it did add is the .gitignore file itself, because that's another file, and that's a file that should be part of the repo anywhere, so when people okay, so that's the git ignore. ሌላ ስለምን ተማርን? Git ignore. It becomes very, very important because there's a lot of intermediary files created in the situation of a code base, for example. For example, like build files አሉ በጣም ብዙ የሚፈጠሩ binary file anytime you're like building your code, test ስታደርጉ የሚፈጠሩ ፋይሎች ሊሆኑ ይችላሉ. Things that are unnecessary to the repo itself, like temporarily or every build or every time a process runs create የሚደረጉ ፋይሎች. And if we don't include them in a git ignore, when we say git status ለምሳሌ to check what we have committed, what we have changed that aren't tracked ምናምን, if you get like 30 lines of new files that you don't care about, that's extremely hard to work with, which is why git ignore is super important to know about. So okay, so now we have these files. So now I want to use git add. Git add does 2 things. One, it allows Git to start tracking. So how does you guys under untracked files now? I just created random files. Right now Git is not tracking them. They're not on Git's radar. Git doesn't know particularly exactly what changes have been made. It just knows that there are new files in the repo that it's not tracking. So git add allows me to start tracking them, and git add also puts what I did on the stage. Stage ላይ ያስቀመጥኩት ማለት ነው I'm ready to commit it ማለት ነው. So let's go ahead and stage and add track, stage and commit. Track and stage with one command, git add. So I can say git add no4 thoughts, right? Git add dot git ignore git add. There's a way to add everything all together, either a -a option or manaman. For clarity, we'll do this, right? So now when we take git status, it has staged them. Okay, it has started tracking them, and it has staged them, and it says changes to be committed. Okay, so what did we do so far? We also did git add to track and stage changes. So now let's commit. Oh, git status and git status check status of people. So ምን እላለሁ አሁን ስቴጅ አድርጌያለሁ ፋይሎቼ እንዳለ I can commit. Git commit ስል it opens up a text editor for me, right? Commit እዚህ ጋር መጽፈው in front of the pond ያለው እንዳለ ignore ይደረጋል። ለኔ እየነገሩኝ ነው ይሄንን ኮሚተር ምናምን please enter the commit messages. Line starting with the will be ignored. So I will say, so now we're going to come to a super important part of Git as well. How you craft your commit message. Your commit message should be descriptive. Your commit message shouldn't be too long. It shouldn't be too short. It should be the amount that is needed to explain clearly what those changes are. So what did we do? We add git ignore. There are like debates about also the tense that you should use git, like do you say add or added manamen. I prefer this, but yeah, I don't think at the end of the day it matters so much. Add git ignore and notes files, right? That's what I did. So and then I close. In industry ለምሳሌ እኔ የምሰራበት መስሪያ ቤት ደግሞ there's things like there's a commit message format that we should all follow, and if we don't, there's a tool that checks automatically commits አስገባ, does she follow that format? And it looks something like, usually I would do like feat if I added a feature, or fix if I added a bug fix or something, and then in brackets I would add the name of the project, like because within the same repo multiple projects, you know, like we have a huge repo, so I named like projects name askaballo ziga, and then the zva like the name askaballo, and then ziga and then the second line I have to add Jira number. Jira, if you don't know what it is yet, you will find out in this class. Yeah, user story capture የሚያደርግ, it's a tool for like agile squads ምናምን, but like every feature or like every piece of work that you have to do is tied to a user story which has its own code. እና እቺን code user story code ልበለው እዚህ ጋር አስገባለሁ ማለት ነው. But I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to add a simple commit message and save, right? So we just used git commit, make changes. Okay, 15 minutes. All right, so now we're going to use a new command, which is called git log. Git log shows you the commit history, right? So there's been only a little history so far. There's the initial commit ምንድነው readme ያስገባንበት commit, and then the second commit ፋይሎችን ያስገባንበት commit. I can add a -p to the git log command to look through it in more detail. So now we're talking አይደል? If I go initial commit ባያት ለምሳሌ initial commit ምንድነው ያደረገችው? +++ readme የተጨመረ ማለት ነው። ሁለተኛው ኮሚት ምንድን ያደረገችው? add git ignore and add files. git ignore የምትባለውን ፋይል ጨመርን። no4 thoughts የምትባለውን ፋይል ጨመርን የታለች empty ፋይል የምትባለውን ጨመርን እንታለ somewhere around here. But anyway, it shows you the history in more detail. Okay, so we did git log to show commit history. Alright? Now how about I make a new change? Let me make a change to an existing file. Let's open up no4 thoughts again. Now like we have some new notes. Let's put those in. Save them, right? Now I say git status. See now, untracked thoughts, tracked thoughts, minamin. Untracked files actually have again another version of that engine file. We can add that again to git ignore. And I could say okay. See now it says, oh, modified git ignore, which because I added that thing, modified no4 thoughts. See now it doesn't say untracked because now ande add karagachu bahala, it's now forever tracked by git. What it says is changes not staged for commit. So I need to stage those changes for commit. So I'll say git. Let me make one more change. Let me say empty file in sasache not empty right? And then I look git status and all three are modified. But I'm like, oh, I don't need empty file ask button change because that file is supposed to be empty, right? I can do something called, and let's say yeah. So ziga actually git checkout file to discard changes in working directory. So I can take this file back to its last commit. The last commit ላይ ምንድነው ያደረግነው? empty እንዳለ ነው commit ያደረግነው አይደለ? So if I say git checkout and then do empty file, now git status ስለው, see, it's not there anymore. What it did is it restored it to the previous commit session. This is sometimes very nice. And ነገር ሲሰራላችሁ commit ታደርጉታላችሁ. ከዛ you play around and you're like, oh, this isn't good anymore. I ruined something. I want to go back to the last working version that I committed. It's a very easy command. You say git checkout, say the file name. It restores all the changes to the file back to what you committed. And that's why it's a great idea when like you finish something that makes sense and it works well, commit it. Commit it. Okay. So now we have these. We can git add -a command to that one. We can add both to staging. So now it's changes to be committed. See the difference between changes to be committed and changes not staged for commit? Now these are staged, right? So I can say git commit and add to git ignore and update notes. That's what we did. Descriptive message. It has to be descriptive. It has to be such that other people can read that commit message and understand what that snapshot has, so they can use it to their advantage. Okay, so now I say git log again. Now I have 3 commits. Okay, now what do I do? Right? So now I want to take the changes that I have here and bring them back to my like remote repo here, the one that I'm tracking in GitHub, right? So good practice generally is to make sure that your local is up to date with this before you try and push changes there. Lemon did know. Right now, because I just created it and I know no one else knows about this except us, I know no changes have been made. But usually, in between when you're making changes and when you want to push, something has already changed in the repo that you cloned from. So you want to update yourself and fix any conflicts here before you push. So I could say git pull origin. It says already up to date because there are no changes here. Then I can say git push origin. Origin ማለት the originating እቺ ናት. That's just the keyword that Git uses to do. Oh, there's an authentication issue. This is something that I didn't show here because I already have Git set up. But Git setup ስታደርጉ, when you first configure Git, you have to configure it with like an email and password, and then essentially have a way that links your account, your Git account on GitHub with your local Git account. Maybe I should have done that setup before. Let's see if I can use. Okay, right, that must have worked. What? በጣም እንዳትስቁብኝ ፓስወርዴን ረስቼው ነው እንደዚህ የምትነበር። This is annoying. Okay, it doesn't matter. We'll figure this out. There's other things that I wanted to cover before we're out of time. So right now, one thing we haven't covered so far in Git is this idea of branches. And then we'll figure out how to push to this so we can see how we can create a pull request. But so far, ምን ሞክረናል ደግሞ ባይሰራልንም git push, git pull, bring in changes from remote, push changes to remote repo. Okay, so branch ደግሞ ለምንድን የሚጠቅመው? Another amazing thing to be able to collaborate. Let me see if I can find a diagram. By the way, I hope this diagram makes way more sense now that we've gone through the okay, maybe not. So branch ማለት like not only are you able to have different versions of your repository at different times, snapshots, you're also able to just have completely separate paths of work and track those independently. ስለዚህ like branch ማለት ለምሳሌ so far in a single branch ነበር ሲሰራ የነበረው አይደል? git log, all my logs were in the same branch, main branch ውስጥ ነበረ. So if I say git branch, it shows me and branch ነው ያለው, the name of the branch is main. Traditionally, the name of the main branch is master also. Normally, you'd have a master and develop branch and a branch for each feature that you would do, right? So I can create a branch here. And yeah, so I can say branch ለመፍጠር, you say git checkout. if you're creating the branch for the first time, you have to add a -b. Checkout ምትለዋን ቅድም የተጠቀምንባት to make to restore the file to its previous ነው። አሁን to create a branch እንጠቀምባታለን። Git checkout b, let's say ምን ነው መጨመር የምፈልገው? Let's say add notes about agile notes, right? So አሁን git branch ብል ሜን ላይ አይደለም ስታሩ ያለችው agile notes የሚባል branch ተፈጥሮ agile notes ውስጥ ነኝ ያለሁት ማለት ነው። So ls, so these are the files here. Let me create a file called agile notes. Agile is very good. Okay, save that. I do git status. I see it's untracked now. What do I do when it's untracked? I have to git added. So now it's ready for commit, changes to be committed. So I can do a git commit, add agile notes. There's up. I do git log. The git log contains all. So when you check out a branch, like if it's been going, like ለምሳሌ, if I can draw, you'd have a work stream that's going እንደዚህ አይደል? When you branch, it's like ከዚህ point ነገር ነው የሚሄደው አይደለ? So it goes from here and then there's a separate branch, just like a tree branch. I don't know how, maybe I can hide a paint tool. ዛሬ አይፓዴ ስለሌለች ተቸግሬያለሁ። Okay, never mind. Anyway, I wanted to draw a tree branch, but I wanted to show that ቅድም main branch ከነበረበት point ላይ ነው branch off ያደረገው. So everything committed in the main branch exists here. ቅድም ያደረግናቸው ኮሚቶች እንዳለ ማለት ነው. But now we have one separate commit, add agile notes የሚል. Right? And in agile notes የምትባላ list አለች. So look at my branches, git branch. I want to now go back to the main branch, git checkout main, right? Switch to the branch. ምን ይለኛል? Your branch is ahead of origin main by 2 commits. Git push to publish your local commits. So this is telling me that የፈጠርኳችሁ branch, it has commits that aren't there in the branch main. How do I know Leila? When I say ls and list the contents of the directory, look at this. There is no agile notes file because the file agile notes only exists in what branch? The agile notes branch. If I say git log here now from the main branch, I don't see that commit that I added. Got it? Yeah. Oh, okay, I need to reset all stuff. But yeah, see? So now my branches are distinctly different. And what is this good for? You can say when you're working on distinctly different things, you can have different branches that track those separately. And eventually I can merge the agile, I can merge these 2 branches together. And I'm going to say agile notes እንትን ያደረኩት change ወደ main መምጣት ይችላል የሚለው. Let's see, we're in main. Let's see if we can do this. Actually, I've never done this. Git pull agile notes. Oh, I have to say Git live. Okay. All right. So now we see a new command, git merge. Merge changes in different branches or repos. So what I did was, so now, just to show you, I'm in the main branch. From the main branch, I ran git merge and used the branch name that had the changes for the agile notes file. And then it says updating, fast forward, one file changed, whatever, said it added the change that existed in the agile notes branch that didn't exist in main. So now when I list the contents of the directory, agile notes file added in the main branch. And if I do git log, I will have a merge commit. Where is this? There we go. We have this commit. Merge sargo, commitun import argo. Now it also exists in the main branch. So this is really the same thing that exists on a remote level. I do think we might need to have a follow-up session, just covering the whole account detailing setup karakubala, just covering the whole GitHub / local Git and Misara, raising a pull request, reviewing a pull request, and then merging into a pull request online. Fixing merge conflicts, that's a huge skill that you need to have, is also something we need to go over. But today, we did cover a good bit, which is forking a repo, Git cloning Git, and what Git is, why it's important, what GitHub is in relation to Git, some of these commands, how to be comfortable running these different commands in my local, having different branches, committing in a branch, and then merging that back into main. These are all important stuff. So I think we'll need to have a follow-up session on more industry level Git workflows rather than just a familiarity with the tool. But yeah, thank you for coming. It is 9 a.m. in Uganda.